Well, hi there, everybody. Thank you for joining us here today, Tomasz. Oh, the handheld. Well, actually, can we, Justin, can you please bring the mic back? Yeah, thank you. Or there's another one. We're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. This is a little dream come true now, having like all of the EF leadership coming to join us here in Prague. During this interview, I have a couple questions that I prepared. It should take about like 30 minutes, and then I want to give some space to the audience to ask questions as well, if that's fine. So I would like to kind of look back at your background at like Nethermind a bit, and then talk about kind of your views on Ethereum ecosystem, and then maybe dive into some technicalities. But you and I actually checked my emails recently, and you and I met roughly exactly actually 5 years ago for the first time over an email started between Nethermind and ESP of the Ethereum Foundation. And I remember Nethermind as basically this like super resourceful client teams that was like one of the most efficiently functioning developer teams that I've encountered at the time. And I've said it in like many private conversations, but it was like very admirable because like compared to all of the other client teams back in the day when like Get had like 80% of the network, you guys were running like, I don't know, like 6-7 like developer teams had like costs of like 2 devs, which was incredible. And like in the email that you sent me as the introduction, you essentially, and I'm quoting, you said that the target group of Nethermind are people who are planning to run integrated solutions for DeFi at the time. And I'm going to come back to that later. But I would like to start with the story of Nethermind a bit, if you don't mind. Because what you've done within the next like 8 years is that you've scaled this like one relatively small client developer team to an organization that has exceeded the number of people of the Ethereum Foundation. And I would like to ask you about what's the secret behind Nethermind's growth, and are there like any lessons and experiences that you feel like you could be applying in your new role now?
Thanks for a lot of good words. So yeah, that's an 8 years journey. And is there any secret? I think that it's a lot of lack of finding fantastic people at various stages, people who really were absolutely dedicated to building on Ethereum, who actually were at various stages, sometimes simply desperate, and then realizing their potential and building and thinking, oh, this is a great chance to build something fantastic and to really care about technology. There was a bit of lack of deciding to go with C#, which was so not popular with everyone in the industry, which means that every C# developer that was dreaming for a long time, has been dreaming for a long time, that they can show that it's also a good language, it's also good technology. They wanted to show it outside of corporations where they were normally. So we had this pool of talent of people with experience of 10, 15 years in large financial institutions. They couldn't go and build something against those institutions by themselves with all that experience, and they wouldn't be able to find other companies. So that was helping a lot, right? Like suddenly you had this exclusive pool of talents to keep building. And that helped at the beginning. Also, I think the fact that we were coming from, like, I was in UK, but lots of people were from Poland, and it was much easier market to have the like lower cost development at that time. It's changed since then, like, so it's definitely very, very different nowadays. And over time, we were finding more and more people, and we started believing a lot in this like internship program, and of which actually Mario built a lot of good examples in the Ethereum Foundation as well. So with the internship program, we found over years, like 600 people went through this program. And I think among the Nethermind people, probably around 70 of the full contract people were coming from the internship program in the first place. So that strong belief in the internship program actually for me came from Citibank. at Citibank, I was very much involved in the internship program, which was people were coming for like 1.5 years and transferring between different teams. And I realized how good it is in finding the leaders, finding people that are really dedicated, want to learn in all the different areas. So I copied some of those ideas. I added a lot of ideas from the book that I read, The Work Rules by Laszlo Bock from Google, describing how they were creating culture of talent at that time. Probably a lot of other ideas from management, and then I found some just fantastic people that helped me, and much of the scaling later happened with the leaders that came after me. So.
Thank you. I think it's like 2 years ago, maybe it was actually in Prague. We did not meet in person for a long time, and then finally we met, and there was at a time like Nethermind was already this like team of 250, maybe more now even. I don't know. And we were talking about this like challenge of being like a developing, like a founder developer, like a person that kind of like got into the space because they were seeking kind of alignment with the technologies, like wanted to write code, being hands down, and I was kind of complaining about like me jumping into dev project and then not really being able to like develop on it. And you mentioned like one thing that stuck in my head, which was that at some stage of like organizational growth, the challenges that you encounter reach the complexity of the code. So you kind of start thinking about the organizational structure and its strategies as like if you were actually coding. I suspect that among the crowd here, generally like within the Ethereum space, there might be a lot of kind of similar stories. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts about which challenges did you encounter, which challenges do you think these like developers and like tech founders can expect to encounter when they're transitioning into a managerial role?
Yeah, I think the development is a combination of a few things, right? So one is the problem solving on mathematical level. There's particular algorithms and optimizations. The other thing is the architecture of solutions. So thinking of the code base as some set of modules that interact, the interfaces, how they talk to each other, choosing the tech stack. So I think that second aspect of coding is something that I really cared a lot about for a long time. And sure, I was finding a lot of pleasure in this, like riddle solving and maths and logics of it. But I think the second part was more what I cared about, the organization, structure, hierarchy. And that also represents, like I studied actually computer science, but also business administration, marketing. And I spent a lot of time with like economics games when I was a child. And I think that aspect of organization structure that I was looking for in computer games for a long time. So I was working at Citibank, and I was really excited about, this huge organization, I can analyze how it works. So I was like spending a lot of time analyzing the organizational structure, their changes, how they're structuring different teams, where the inefficiencies were when they were trying to do like the global architecture team and pushing solutions. I was thinking, what causes innovation to stop at banks, when you introduce procedures and processes. And then I actually was tired of being manager in a bank, so I wanted to escape it, and I started working in a hedge fund. And then I was working there, and I was thinking, I want to do even less of the meetings and management. So that's why I started a company. And now, you never can escape it, right? If you love it. So at some point, I think at around maybe 100 people, I realized that the structure of the organization starts to feel like the architecture of the system, of the software system, and you start having the same fun of the economics of it, of structuring, of modules, of building the interfaces between people and teams, and that was extremely satisfying in a way, and allowed me to maybe move away a bit from this urge to code.
So besides the book Work Rules, what would be your recommendation to other devs that are kind of encountering the same fact of at some stage they'll have to leave the code to the devs and step up? What are the key lessons learned for you?
Well, I think for me it was board games, economic games, understanding the interpersonal relationships, or the conversations and the diplomacy, Like think of games like Werewolf. Probably many of you played this, like the Avalon, the board games where you have to convince others about something. And I experimented with those a lot, like how to play games like this without any adversarial actions, without lying. And this is fun. You can actually do and win those games, and people are just so much assuming that you're always lying that they're surprised when you're not, and you still can just somehow manipulate it. Then I started thinking, oh, that's still almost like lying when you manipulate people. So how is it that you can play also those games in the larger blockchain industry? Because you realize that the board games are simplifications of those interactions. They can still be either competitive or non-adversarial. And realizing over many years that when you play the simple board games in this like repeatable way, and then also, actually I think in 2019 I was at this like kernel program from Vivek, and there we were talking about the communication and repeatable games, and I saw like, oh, that's exactly what we can do to grow the company in this world where everyone is just like so insecure about problems, about stresses of the market that goes up and down, and we realize that we enjoy playing repeatable game. So I think that's what I would encourage everyone to do. Think of repeatable games, of winning together, of playing with this, but playing in a different way. Like recently I was playing Settlers of Catan, so many people may know it. Like there's this like this single adversarial action there is to play like a thief. And I started playing this game by playing Thief always on a desert, which is like a silly action, and telling people that if you do the same to me always, it's fine. Because actually it doesn't change the game at all. It just removes a bit of randomness. And a lot of the same aspects you can introduce to building companies and actually benefiting from winning. And people start trust you more. And they see it over many years. I think this was one of the aspects of Nethermind. We said to everyone in the company that that's the games that you are playing, that you want to be expected to play fair and to play together.
So my next question is actually about your leadership philosophy. It sounds like yourself like come from this like riddle solving, like playing games on the organizational level. But how would you describe your leadership style, and like what would be the qualities that you look for in people that you work with? Because there is a lot of like soft skills that you had to implement from like the computer science into like building up the organization. So
I always thought that when you read the books from people that are leaders, like you probably don't want to read the books that they wrote themselves. You want to read the books that somebody else wrote about them by just having a lot of conversations with people around, because we very often don't know what exactly is causing us to somehow be contagious with some excitement. Like we think one thing and then we realize that maybe it's something else. And I'm always very worried about that. Like that maybe I think, oh, I really understand people, but the truth is that maybe they're scared because like I'm too emotional. And then you read some books and it says, yeah, you should be emotional, but then you think, am I really? So what I believe in the leadership is like that leaders should be just natural, that you can never point at someone and say they'll be your leader, right? So the leadership should always emerge from the structures in the company. The leaders are just like feeling super uneasy when there is a space, when there is a gap for leadership. So I think that any action of mine in the past, when I saw that something was not handled and it was there around me, if it was causing me to feel irritation, that it has to be handled, so I have to do it, that's maybe the leadership that I believe in, and it's for everyone else, it's probably the same. It's something totally different than management. And I don't know, sometimes it's just something like, that's maybe why sometimes with founders you look for some past traumas, like people that really want to prove something, like that they feel that there is some gap and they want to say like, yeah, I can pick it up. I'll prove you that you can rely on me, like that reliability probably very often. And I wish I was more reliable, but probably many other aspects. Everyone has their own flavor of leadership, so as long as someone is unique in some aspect, they can achieve a lot.
So, I mean, from what I keep hearing, you are the person that like currently responds to everybody. So it doesn't sound like you are not reliable actually in this aspect. But it's a good segue to also talk about EF, especially the part of like kind of feeling the leadership gap, which like may relate to kind of the the subtraction attitude of EF. But I would like to start on just your recent experience with the organization. When you officially joined EF, what aspects of its like culture or like operations were the biggest surprises for you, if there were any?
There were a few things that I was like addressing quickly, or simply it wasn't that hard because everyone wanted to introduce it immediately. So there was a structure, that the idea of leadership, that was people who are leaders, but everyone in the organization was saying that they don't have that much communication with the leaders, and no blame. Like there were very serious limitations for various reasons at the foundation to build some of those communication aspects, both externally and internally. But I was coming at the stage when, suddenly everything was so much simpler for me to execute, and people wanted me to execute changes. So suddenly you can claim that you've made a lot of changes, but actually it just comes easier, and then for whoever was there before. And so the biggest changes was just like giving a bit more of the leadership responsibilities to people that were team leads, and I think that the entire ecosystem would consider leaders. Think of people that everyone like recognizes, whether it's Team Bako, whether it's Parry, whether it's Ansgar, Dankra, like people that are seen at the events, at the forums, that publish really like groundbreaking aspects of like the changes. They talk about changes. They're not afraid to ask difficult questions. They're talking. They're active on social media. So letting those leaders to be just feeling that yes, they can do almost everything, and the management, like the former leader said, was the management team that would support them in executing this, was one big change. And I was surprised at the beginning maybe that they didn't have ability to really claim it. I was surprised a bit about like how many different channels for communication people would use, and I had this like urge at the beginning to tell people let's move to Slack. And then I realized very quickly that this would be such a silly battle to fight, that there would be so much pushback on it. So I thought, okay, no, I can adjust and see whether I can use those like 5 channels. I can use Telegram, Signal, and Discord, and something else, and yeah, Signal. So this worked. So in the end, actually, it was not a problem. So just realizing that it's enough to just set the expectations on the communication, and the channels are maybe less important. Were there any other big changes and surprises? Just sheer number of people, maybe, and the budgets were a surprise. So thinking of, all right, okay, this is much more than I imagined. I thought that maybe it would be below 100 people and PSC. Maybe I thought that the budget would be half of what I saw. So the EF is operating now with like 150 million budget annually, and it has around 250 people. And there are changes to it, like PSE is changing a lot. So, and then after 2 months, I said, look, this organization maybe didn't change that much. And then people say, no, actually, a lot has already changed because of those minor changes. So it's not even me, it's them changing it mostly. And it's just because people can introduce those changes. They are allowed to do that, but we are very impatient before it happens.
I would like to touch on the subtraction strategy. Is this something that like you as the new co-ED are planning to like keep on executing the same way it was executed, or do you perhaps think there is like now like a different time and EF should like rather broaden up the agendas that it's covering? What's your approach?
So mostly I would say that no, I don't think this is what we continue at the moment. I understand what the subtraction meant, and it's like we always thought that was probably some marketing trouble to call it subtraction, because people think about it as like disappearing and being worse. I think it was a defensive tactic of spawning so many organizations, independent organizations that would operate as public goods supporting organizations, open source and research organizations, so that Ethereum would survive any very adversarial environments. And actually EF as being this the cradle for many teams to learn how to operate independently and how to operate as a public good support organizations. So that was the idea, and I think it was particularly difficult because there's not that much of the literature on how to do it well. And then I think there's much to explore to understand some of the big decisions, because particularly historically, people hear about subtraction, but also what comes with it. These were some like very significant grants that were assigned to various organizations that were practically separating from the foundation and launching. And I think for the next 1 or 2 years, we'll be trying to avoid it, that we like already have quite a lot of decentralization in the system, and now we are being asked to balance it a bit and to win and to be stronger and to be more focused. And those organizations that were created 1, 2, 3 years ago, they'll be probably doing a lot of fantastic work and makes Ethereum much more resilient. So what I say is just we still understand the long-term game, but the expectation now and the willingness of what we want to focus on is the next 1, 2 years.
And if you may expand on that a bit, kind of from your perspective, what are the agendas that you wish or want EF to take on now, and kind of conversely, what are the fields that you're hoping for the community to take over, perhaps from EF's shoulders, or just generally which gaps should be filled by the community?
So maybe I'm not greatly in favor of like separating responsibilities up front. I prefer when everyone tries to operate like they want to do everything. There's a bit of this leadership aspect, and just the natural constraints of everyone's skills and I don't like geographic location would say, okay, you cannot do more anyway, which means that the structure should naturally lead to like if every single person in that structure operates with everything that they want to do and pushing very hard, then you should succeed, but you shouldn't tell people don't do something. I probably broke this rule so many times, so I wouldn't quote myself on it, but I did. Okay, so coming back, what community should do, like everything that community cares about, of like building local communities, building applications, encouraging new entrants, like new users, developers, founders, thinking of starting accelerators, incubators, people starting VCs. It also starts very often from community. Like people starting VCs start from community very often. They going to enterprises, talking to, answering questions with policymakers, helping with marketing. Sure, it may feel decentralized and chaotic, but that's what we thrived on for a long time, and I think we would. And what is problematic more often is some kind of like demotivation resulting from maybe like the understanding that there are some challenges. So just shouting that we are actually at the pivotal moment, that there is so many opportunities for Ethereum, that the enterprises are coming in, that the market is really supporting of like changes, building actions. There's AI opportunities. So that's everything should be with community, like the excitement, building, experimenting, trading, experimenting with every single aspect of blockchain. That's great. And foundation should be absolutely best in whatever it's doing now. So the coordination, research, engineering of some of the solutions, like the crucial components of the ecosystem. And yeah, I think that's a very natural split. We're starting to work a bit more on the ecosystem development as well. So like focusing on this founders onboarding, but acting more as a network builder rather than grants allocator.
So one concrete question regarding that. In your opinion, should the EF appoint a CTO type of role?
Possibly. I think that the scope of the engineering challenges now is very, is huge. I mean, like the things related to interop, UX, and scaling would really appreciate the top engineering talent to come to the EF, like the engineering management. However, before doing all of this, like I try to open foundation for more conversations with the institutions that are already within the ecosystem. Like for example, the L2s, they have some fantastic top engineering talent, engineering management. So we started reaching out to them and asking just for, hey, let's just consult it. How would you do it? Like what's your ability to advise us? And we've done it for various aspects, for strategy, for HR, now for engineering management, for talent. We reached out to VCs, we reached out to L2s, we reached out to DeFi protocols, to top Solidity builders, and started asking them, what would you do? And big part of management sometimes is just like those few very targeted advices and pieces of advice that tell you this is how you should do it. And maybe this would be enough if you have very, very talented team of individual contributors, and that would start realizing, oh, the ecosystem, the community can manage us. So maybe then you don't need particularly like the engineering manager, but you need the excellent engineers within DF to create maybe, in many cases, to build these prototypes for major engineering improvements like P2P, some scaling solutions. But some of those, like many of those, are already in the client team, so very often you'll be able to just allocate some major challenges there. So it's a balancing and composition of different approaches.
So diving a bit into kind of the technological part before we give space to the audience. As mentioned before, like one of the first things that you said about Nethermind is that that's a client focus at DeFi builders and people who want to create DeFi solutions. Do you think DeFi is the killer app of Ethereum and kind of the thing that we should optimize and focus on, or do you think like there is still this like space where we should optimize for optionality and like create new spaces and like kind of new unprecedented use cases of Ethereum?
I think DeFi and automation of governance are the major aspects of what I see on blockchain, but then you have lots of other things that maybe are somewhere on the edge. Like when we think about gaming and blockchain, it's really, in most of the cases, I believe we introduce the economies to games, and that's why we run them on blockchain, or like the property aspects, maybe identity. So now the identity, privacy, but then is it part of the international transfers and payments, which is DeFi really? So these are properties of DeFi. So if you really understand DeFi that broadly, then DeFi is stablecoins, DeFi is as like strictly DeFi as something that is entirely permissionless and on-chain, or maybe partially DeFi as moving assets from the real world assets into chain. And yeah, so then I think it's a killer app in this sense. And we just like add this aspect of finance on blockchain. The governance is a bit on the side, but it just describes how this decentralization should look and self-govern and create hierarchies on chain. And now with all the AI, I think this will be a huge thing, like the automation of those. It can be automation of governance. It can be just the economies of AIs, of agents. I think will be huge. This is coming. If we talk about metaverse and NFTs, again, this is a bit of aspects of economy and property. It's somewhere on the side of DeFi. Like it's just like nature of ownership, right? The World of Warcraft thing, but yeah. Thank
you. So one last technical question. This can be like super quick, or you can expand as you want. But should we double down on EVM, or should we look for alternative execution engines and different VMs to swap it for?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Like it feels that EVM has not really the performance bottleneck that much. You can keep improving there, and you could you could start adding other solutions, other VMs, and there was this exploration with RISC-V or the EOF or other approaches, and thinking of maybe some multi-tenant solutions where you have multiple VMs coexisting on Ethereum. But then you potentially also think of, do you lose the mode of all the tooling of the VM? If actually you think that you have massive network effects from EVM being there and on all the different chains, then actually we're winning something with it. But then people would say, oh, but there's also next generation of developers that may not know that mode exists, that actually for them that mode is a problem. They cannot learn those tools, and sure, like the people like Austin do amazing work consistently on bringing more and more devs. So I think it's balancing of whether this is like the best possible thing that you can do for scaling and for improved UX at the given moment with the amount of effort that you would expect. Maybe the things are not mature yet. So being open to other VMs, for sure, yes. Deciding whether this is now the right moment to replace the EVM, probably not. ZK EVM will show us like how much of changes we need. And if there will be some kind of 10x improvement in performance, then we'll be very much open to change very quickly. And we'll be observing everything else that happens, or 10x improvement in UX. So if that happens, for sure we'll be open to it.
So at this stage, I would like to ask the audience if there are any questions. Now is your time. We still have 15 minutes to go. Does anyone want to ask?
Hey, thank you.
Hey.
I have a little question. So you mentioned that you bullish AI agents. If you had one workflow of your daily habits, of your daily life, that would be replaced by an agent, which one would it be?
Well, everything probably. so I would stop doing anything. No, I guess the management of projects, like you can imagine, like on chain, you're spawning something like a ephemeral L2 for a single project. You manage resources and you coordinate, and then the agents just like after finishing that project delivering, just dissolve and remove the project chain. All the aspects of just managing coordination, calendars, and the governance aspect. For example, I would love to replace in the future, maybe some aspects of ACD, all core devs, or research with agents, like improvements to protocol with agents, at least like in some hybrid models with the humans collaborating with agents. Lots of other things. Oh, recently also looking at Kartik, I started thinking of the agents that would automatically generate local hackathons. So like the ecosystem development agents where you can start downloading packages that would say anybody in any city around the world can just launch this package and say, oh, I would launch local event, do the marketing, do the venue booking for me, do the sponsorships, send emails to everyone, start managing it. And then you still have some people to coordinate it, but you'll have so much more support. And I think we as a community can start building those packages for developing community, automatically automating community, and it'll be some massive amount of fun, and hopefully it will be open sourced. For sure it will be open sourced, and we'll start contributing together. And then agents will start building community for us. Maybe we'll start acting as moderators. Sorry, Josef. Maybe they'll start acting as managers and all core devs. So I think in the future we'll see like 2 agents talking on stage, and then it means that probably you don't have stages anymore, whatever it will be.
I would love that, honestly. Like it, like
you're doing great job, so it'll be really hard to replace.
I mean, this is half like ChatGPT that like scoped out the question. So, any more questions? Yeah. Can we get a mic here? Yeah, and then Chris. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Hello, Tomasz. I have a question about value capture of the Ether token. Now there are actually many activities going on the layer 2s. And then the layer 2s, they use actually very few ethers to purchase block spaces on layer 1. So basically, a lot of values are captured on layer 2 level. Instead of by the mainnet and the Ether token. What's your opinion about that? Do you agree with it? And what's the solution for that? Thank you.
Sure, thanks for the question. It's a question that is very often being asked, and it's a very important one. So the roadmap with L2s being massively successful was the roadmap for Ethereum. And like I'm proud, and probably like the majority of the people in the ecosystem are proud when the L2s on Ethereum are succeeding, when they're onboarding users, when they're delivering solutions, expanding the DeFi activity, and so on. The growth potential for all of this network, all of the network together is definitely in like hundreds or thousands or even beyond. Like the global economy is still so much bigger than what happens on chain. And because of that, I don't think this is the time to imagine that Ethereum has to like focus on collecting fees from L2s. They should just go and win and expand, and they need the L1 to be very successful. So I think at any point in crisis, the L2s will come back and say, okay, like what we need to do something, like that they'll push for support, for advisory, for strategy, they'll start asking questions like, okay, so do we have to contribute more? And they do come nowadays with those questions, like they're willing to ask, like to pay more in sequencer fees. And so far my answers usually was like, okay, don't worry about it, like we should continue growing. I've had lots of conversation with the strategy team, with Dankert. Dankert would say, but we can set the fee structures. Like we have this research for minimum blob fee and other structures of like how in the future to define the fees. We could show it now, but I would say we shouldn't, because actually we know we can. But still, over time, for the next few years, it will be like even more robust incentive building. There is the RIG team, Robust Incentive Group at Ethereum Foundation, and it works on building over time those incentives into protocol network effects, into strengthening the bonds between L2, L1, strengthening the incentives for the validators, for network participants. So it's all very relevant. So I think in the long term, it's important basis for the L1 to be very strong, and all the L2s want it. And for now, we are extremely happy with the L2 ecosystems growing, and we focus on delivery of the best potential platform for the L2s to thrive on. And part of this best potential platform means that it has to be strong in all the aspects of it. So we think that with the win of all the network together, with all the innovation there, integration, with all the challenges coming from the competition, only with this global win of the global economy on Ethereum, we can have the answer to your question of actually winning in all the aspects.
I believe there was another question in the back.
Yeah. First of all, congratulations on your new role, and really impressed with what I've observed so far. Generic question, interested to know where you think Ethereum needs most help.
I think the engineering, excellent engineering in the aspects of P2P and DA scaling all together in consensus layer, looking at all this roadmap that we have now for L1, L2 scaling. So we have pretty clear roadmap for the next 1 year, but I would love to just accelerate it as much as possible and make sure that we also start showing the excellent engineering solutions for the next 3 years, so we can always come with the next generation of things ahead of everyone else. So this is probably very, very important. And I think this engineering talent is there in the ecosystem. It's just a bit scattered between the different institutions, different L2s and L1, and it's great, but sometimes maybe we have to come together and be very, like some courage to changes, like big protocol changes that will be just excellent and brilliant and above everything else, and saying like we have to ask those questions. And this is a bit of like engineering bravery and research bravery. I'm not talking here about sacrificing anything, that it's super important for protocol. Like whether it's security or censorship resistance, it all matters. And it matters for institutions and for L2s. But we should always look at the protocol and think like how to change it entirely, potentially, to deliver on those product requirements. So that's what we need now a lot. Like the courage to change, courage to explore. It doesn't mean that we just like should have kind of break things attitude, absolutely not. But we should be striving for excellence.
Thanks. Hey Tomasz, thanks. I have one question about you mentioning we could have a 10x in speed, but you also mentioned DeFi and stablecoins, and I think now is kind of the season of stablecoins. Is there a roadmap for compliance or privacy for institutions coming on Ethereum? And is that roadmap for L1 or is it more for Validiums? What's your view on more compliant?
I think it's one of the major requirements from institutions now. So it's not well defined yet. I mean, like I know that many teams are building this solutions, and we've talked to institutions also that come with very good solutions within their jurisdictions. So we talked to a few banks recently in Europe that were presenting solution that was integrating like privacy and compliance, and it looked really solid. So it looks better and better, and every single institution that we go to, they say we need privacy for our customers. So I think this is one initiative that we should start very quickly on the coordination side. That it seems that this is most important answer for institutions now, how exactly they do the privacy on L1. So you were asking about it as well. On L1, because I think that they have much more control over L2s, but I would like to enable that like global exchange, global markets for the customers, and then they need to know how to do the standardized way privacy. Well, you have solutions like Aztec and the Noir language expansion, and then obviously ZK progression also on the privacy side. Later today, I'll be talking about the client side proving. So all of this will be relevant, but I think there should be some effort on standardization. So welcoming all the efforts there.
Hey, Tomasz. Related to this question, actually, because you mentioned a lot about like EF plans in terms of research and engineering. You just said that what Ethereum needs is a lot of engineering talents. However, what the Ethereum was struggling with historically, like, research, and it was always strong for research and development, but what it struggled with is a, unified business vision, unified business approach, and unified front for both Ethereum and L2s building on Ethereum to approach institutions, enterprises, even governments. And EF, historically was rather trying to stay away from this. Now, as we have different institutions already trying to approach this, like Etherealize, also Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, I'm wondering, do you have some kind of a vision of how all those different entities should work together with you to have a unified front, a unified, face, such as Solana Foundation has in the Washington and also approaching enterprises, to have a unified front from Ethereum for business?
Sure, we are entirely rebuilding our ecosystem development function. So James Smith is leading now the restructuring of how ecosystem development team, like the cluster, looks at Ethereum Foundation. We're doing a lot of work of reaching out to institutions, DeFi applications, founders, incubators, accelerators, VCs, and asking them how we address it best. We invite everyone to actually get in touch with myself, with James, with Jason Chaskin, with many other people. You see, we published the structure of the organization, so it can be easier for you to reach out to people and get connected quickly. So we want VCs, incubators, accelerators to be involved in helping accelerating building applications. So we want applications on L1, on L2s. We want to collaborate with L2s, with L2 teams that work on ecosystem development and the hackathons and onboarding developers and coordinating that to quickly move everyone who's interested to build on Ethereum to move to the location team opportunity for funding as fast as possible. So this is on the application side. On the enterprise side, we are reaching out to major institutions that have touched Ethereum in the past, just like very open to have these conversations and listen what they need to change, so that enterprise like security and compliance together is one aspect of it, and everything together, the multiple actions that are going the directions that you're aware of. So it's stable coins, RWAs, it's equities on chain, it's DeFi growth, it's integration of DeFi and TradFi. We want to win it, and we want to accelerate it, and we want developers to feel like, oh, this is the best ecosystem to build on, and we want them to never feel lost and not supported. And I think it matters more to actually help them with mentoring, with connections, with introductions, with some kind of specialized events where they can meet other founders and funding sources like the VCs and others, rather than just simply EF always assigning grants to those people. So we also build lots of metrics to say these are our goals, and we'll start publishing those metrics as soon as we have the first results and say these are our goals for the next quarter, for the next year. This is what we want to do, and we're inviting everyone to participate in this. And by just giving everyone access to those paths of developers and information about what happens, we should give them opportunity to just simply benefit a lot from the network effects, from the ecosystem growth. Like, so we want everyone to just succeed, whether these are people who come to funds, like angel investors, VCs, founders, builders, individual contributors, researchers. We want everyone to just succeed on Ethereum. It's a lot. It feels maybe like no focus, but this is the change that happens, and I think all of this is required as a final result of the changes.
I believe our time is up. Sorry. One last question that I'm also hoping to ask Certim and Vitalik tomorrow, coming back to the first question that was asked, actually, question of futurity. Do you think, well, you mentioned a lot of the use cases of AI for automating different processes. Do you think AI at this stage today is better in decision-making than humans?
No, I don't think it's integrated yet with all the data sources, information, and so on. And I think the leaders of the ecosystem, the thought leaders, are much smarter than the top AIs in the world at the moment. I just think that it's just progressing super fast. And like the most advanced AIs integrated with everything else, probably in a few months to a year, we'll be able to really coordinate and manage pretty difficult aspects of the protocol development.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you so much. Thank you.